There are places in America where people simply refuse to go after dark, not because of wild animals, not because of dangerous terrain, but because of stories. Stories that have been passed down for generations, stories of voices calling from empty places, stories of people who walk into the darkness and never come back. Deep in the mountains of Idaho, hidden among dense forests and abandoned mining roads, lies the remains of an old silver mine known as Silver Creek Mine. For decades, locals have claimed that strange sounds echo from its tunnels at night, the sound of metal striking rock, whispers coming from beneath the earth, and, sometimes, a voice calling someone's name. Many dismissed these stories as legends, until the disappearance of a young man named Jake Anderson in the fall of 1998, a disappearance that remains unexplained to this day. And according to some people, it never truly ended. Silver Creek Mine was once one of Idaho's busiest silver mines. During the early 1900s, hundreds of miners worked there. The mine brought wealth to nearby communities and provided jobs for families across the region. But in 1934, disaster struck. A massive cave-in buried several miners deep underground. Rescue teams worked for days, then weeks. But the tunnels had become too unstable. Eventually, the operation was abandoned. The trapped miners were never recovered. Their bodies remained somewhere beneath thousands of tons of rock. After the accident, strange reports began appearing. Workers claimed they heard knocking sounds coming from sealed tunnels. Hunters reported seeing lantern lights moving underground where no one should have been. Some even claimed they heard desperate voices crying for help. Over time, Silver Creek Mine gained a dark reputation. Locals avoided it. Children were warned never to go there. And after sunset, almost nobody did. In October 1998, 3 friends decided to spend a weekend camping near the abandoned mine. 23-year-old Jake Anderson loved exploring abandoned places. His friends, Mark Collins and Daniel Ross, shared the same interest. The 3 had heard all the ghost stories, but they didn't believe any of them. To them, the mine was simply another forgotten location worth exploring. They packed camping gear, food, cameras, and flashlights. By late afternoon, they arrived at the site. The place felt isolated. Mountains surrounded them on all sides. Tall pine trees blocked much of the sunlight. The entrance to the mine looked like a giant black mouth carved into the hillside. Even during the day, it felt unsettling. Still, the friends laughed about the stories and set up camp nearby. As darkness approached, temperatures dropped rapidly. A cold wind swept through the forest. The trees swayed and creaked. Yet somehow, the silence felt unnatural. There were no birds, no insects, nothing. Just the sound of the wind. Around midnight, the 3 friends sat around a campfire sharing scary stories. The atmosphere was tense, but fun. Eventually, they went to sleep. At approximately 1:30 a.m., Jake suddenly woke up. He sat upright inside his tent. His heart was racing. Someone had called his name. At least, that's what he thought. Jake. The voice had sounded distant, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. He stepped outside. The forest was completely dark. Nothing moved. A few minutes later, he heard it again. Jake. This time it seemed to come from the direction of the mine. He woke Mark and Daniel. Both were annoyed. Neither had heard anything. They assumed Jake was dreaming. But Jake insisted. Someone was calling him. Then all 3 noticed something strange. A faint light appeared near the entrance of the mine. It looked like an old lantern. The light flickered for a few seconds, then vanished. The friends stared in silence. None of them could explain what they had seen. Curiosity quickly overcame fear. The 3 grabbed flashlights and headed toward the mine. As they entered, the temperature dropped dramatically. The air felt icy cold. Every sound echoed through the tunnels. Water dripped from the ceiling. The darkness seemed endless. Then they heard it. The sound of metal striking stone. The rhythm was slow, deliberate, almost as if someone was working deep underground. The friends followed the noise, tunnel after tunnel. The farther they went, the stronger the sound became. Then, the knocking suddenly stopped. The silence that followed felt even worse. After nearly 30 minutes underground, they reached a section marked by old warning signs. This was the area where the 1934 collapse had occurred. According to historical records, nobody had entered these tunnels for decades, yet something was wrong. A heavy steel barrier that should have blocked the passage stood partially open. Behind it stretched a narrow tunnel disappearing into darkness. A freezing wind flowed from inside. Then came the whisper. Not one voice. Many voices, soft and distant, as if dozens of people were speaking at once. Jake froze, his eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. "I can hear them," he whispered. Mark grabbed his shoulder. "We need to leave." But Jake didn't respond. He seemed hypnotized. Slowly he began walking toward the tunnel. The whispers grew louder, and then one voice became clear. "Help us." Without warning, Jake stepped through the opening. Mark and Daniel shouted for him to stop. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A deep rumbling echoed through the mine. Rock cracked overhead. The tunnel walls shook violently. Then came an explosion of dust and debris. The entire passage collapsed. Mark and Daniel ran for safety. When the dust settled, Jake was gone. Completely gone. His flashlight, his backpack, even his footprints, everything had vanished. Only a wall of fallen rock remained. The friends searched desperately. They called his name again and again. But there was no answer. Rescue teams arrived the next morning. For 3 days, they searched the mine. Special equipment was brought in. Engineers examined the collapse. Search dogs were used. Nothing, no evidence, no body, no trace that Jake had ever entered the tunnel. Investigators concluded that he had likely been buried beneath the collapse. The case was eventually classified as a tragic accident. But not everyone agreed, because strange things began happening shortly afterward. 3 days after Jake disappeared, a paranormal investigation group entered the mine. They carried audio recording equipment. Their goal was to document unusual sounds. Several hours later, they reviewed the recordings. At first, there was nothing unusual, just dripping water. Footsteps. Then a voice appeared, a faint voice hidden beneath the noise. The investigators increased the volume, and what they heard chilled them. "Mark," the voice whispered, "help me." Everyone in the room went silent. Mark himself later listened to the recording. According to him, it sounded exactly like Jake. The problem was simple. Jake had already been missing for 3 days. Months later, historians researching the mine uncovered an unsettling detail. One of the miners trapped during the 1934 disaster had been named Jacob Miller. Before communication with the trapped miners was lost, rescuers reportedly heard him repeating the same words. "Help me." The similarity shocked many people. Was it merely a coincidence, or was something else hidden beneath Silver Creek Mine? Some believed the voices belonged to the miners who never escaped. Others believed the mine itself was haunted by something far older, something that had been there long before the first miner arrived. Years later, a group of explorers visited the abandoned site. One member claimed to see a man standing near the collapsed tunnel. The figure appeared thin and pale. His clothes looked decades old. When the explorer called out, the figure slowly turned. For a brief second, the flashlight illuminated his face. The man looked terrified, as if trapped between two worlds. Then he stepped backward into the darkness and disappeared. The explorer later swore the man looked exactly like the photographs of Jake Anderson. Today, Silver Creek Mine remains abandoned. Nature has slowly reclaimed the area. Trees grow where roads once existed. The tunnels continue to decay beneath the mountains, yet locals still tell the same warning. You ever visit the old mine and hear someone calling your name from the darkness? Do not answer. Do not follow the voice. And whatever you do, never enter the sealed tunnel. Because somewhere beneath the mountains of Idaho, something may still be waiting. And it may already know your name.